it's time we add fuzz to our hoodie. And of course, I do mean the thousands and thousands of little tiny fibers that are most evident at the silhouette edge of a hoodie or frankly most pieces of clothing. And this will do so much for finalizing the soft feel of the fabric as well as the believability in the silhouette. One of the most common issues with digital clothing is not having these fibers. Now it is asking a lot of the computer, so if this were a background character, this would be the first thing that I remove. But given that we want to make very large, very highly detailed renders, we need to include it. And so this is going to be one of my favorite photos because it very clearly demonstrates the structure of these fibers. Also gives us a glimpse of the small hairs that grow on the face, foreshadowing. But as we move around our reference collage, we'll see these fibers everywhere. Now this one's a little bit small, but you can still see the fibers breaking up the silhouette. Let's see, what about this one? I like this one because it's got very dramatic lighting and it captures that feel that I'm going for. So this is also going to be one of my favorites to reference. But it should be said that I find the more fibers or the more evident the fibers, kind of the older the clothing feels, the more worn it feels. Whereas a brand new hoodie should have less fibers. I wouldn't say no fibers, but less. Like in this image, you can't see a ton of the evidence for it. In general, it just feels like a newer hoodie to me. And then there's another one down here where you don't get an overly distinct breakup on the silhouette. All right, so if I was going for something like this, I'd probably want to use either less fibers or just shorter fibers. But anyway, we're going to go for this kind of thing. And so before I add the particle system, again, these are going to be a ton of hairs, and it's going to be pretty slow changing the parameters unless I lower my multi-res viewport level. So we'll go down to 2 instead of the full 4 levels. And now I should be good to add our particle system. I'll rename this hoodie fuzz and hoodie fuzz underscore data. We'll change it to a hair type. Now I do think it's probably a better idea to start from scratch here. If I chose the eyelashes or eyebrows, I would be undoing a lot of those settings. And given the high volume of these fibers, I'll change the emission number to 3000. And the hair length, let's try 0.001. That looks like it might be a little bit too small. How about 0.003? Yeah, I think this is a better number. Again, we can always shorten them afterwards, but this length should be the longest possible hair length. And as far as segments, let's go down to the lowest setting, which is 2. We're not going to be combing these hairs. They're just going to be emitting out of the surface normal. So the segments is most important for when you're editing the hairs. And then we'll jump straight down to the children because we're going to need a lot of them. So we'll click interpolated and change the display amount to 100 and the render amount to 300. And then for the length, this is where we can define a threshold for shorter hairs versus longer hairs. So let's take the length value down to, let's try 0.5. And since the threshold's at 0, they all shrunk. So let's go up slowly like 0.1. And then we'll see about 10% of them increase to the full length. And that's probably going to be pretty good. We might need to go to 2, or 0.2, I mean. But 0.1, 0.2, somewhere in that range. And then the most important settings are going to be our roughness, because right now everything's pushing straight out. There's no randomness to the fiber's directions. So let's start with random, and I'm going to go 0.001. We want to keep this value pretty small. And then the size, let's go down to 0.5. And start to give some shape to these. Maybe 0.002, slightly increase the random value. Also, something to keep in mind is whenever you're dealing with a high roughness, you can start to see these squiggly lines, and the default settings are going to be misleading, right? So if we go to viewport display, you want to start increasing these strand steps because these are a lower value for the sake of viewport performance compared to render is at 3 steps. All right, so we want to make these consistent to get a better understanding of what the viewport's giving us versus what the render will give us. So we step up and we can see that there's a lot of squiggliness going on, which I don't really want that much squiggle as much as I want them kind of pointed in random directions. So with that a little more trustworthy in the viewport, let's adjust the size up to like 1, maybe 2. Let's see, increase the strength. Let's see, just trying to get a good value. Take the random strength down slightly. I wonder if 1 is a better value here. Yeah, I do like 1. But they're starting to get a little too long. So let's go back up to that global hair length control. Let's take it down 0.002. It's feeling better. We'll leave it there for the first test. And let's see what it looks like rendered, because we need to set up a material, a hair-based material. Oh, and we have to change the hair diameter, looking more like a sheepdog than fuzz. So under hair shape, let's see here, the diameter root, let's go 0.1, and then zoom in close so we can get this value correct. How about 0.01? All right, that seems a bit more believable. The strand shape, I'll take down to -0.5. So that will keep the majority of the strand this diameter root. Whereas if you go positive 0.5, the majority will be the tip diameter. And then we can have more global control around the scale. And let's go to 0.005. I still think it's a little bit thick, but I do like the shape overall. So this should reduce it by half. There we go. Nice, really, really small fibers. And as for the material, so by default, it uses whatever material is assigned to the object, the emitter object, which in this case, under the render settings, is hoodie. So we want to add a slot 2 and add a new material. And this is very slow with viewport rendering enabled. And what I want to try here is shader principled hair BSDF. All right, with the default color being a brown, I expected it to be a light gray. So let's go down to 0 saturation and the value at 0.8. So an almost white color. And then shift control click on that and get rid of the principled BSDF. Let's preview that in the viewport. And these are going to be so small that it's probably best to just make our decisions based on renders. So we can see them showing up, but it's also only 30% of the final number of hairs. So we've gotten as far as we can go in the viewport. Now we'll switch to slot 2 and do a proper render. Let's see full resolution. And yes, the fibers are definitely there, but they're kind of dark, aren't they? The thing about these fibers is that they're almost always lighter in value than the color of the hoodie. So like you see them glowing in a rim light situation. There's one image over here. All right, it's common whenever you see any backlight that the whole rim glows due to those fibers. So that's what I mean by lighter in value. Whereas if you see on this side in shadow, the fibers almost disappear more than you ever see them go to a darker color. So like what we have happening here is not characteristic of fibers. So I want to try a different hair BSDF. We use the principled, which combines reflection and transmission. Instead, I want to add a shader hair BSDF, which, if you'll remember, separates reflection and transmission. So let's just choose transmission. So there's no reflection, but only the absorption of light by the fibers. And we'll plug that into our surface. We'll keep the principled hair BSDF around just in case this transmission doesn't work out. We'll switch to slot 3 and render again. Let's take a look. All right, so this is transmission only. We can still see some dark fibers as we see the before and after. Nothing changed. Oh, I am a goober. So remember we created that material in slot 2. Well, you have to explicitly define that that's the material you want in our render settings. So if you were screaming that at the video for the past few minutes, you are correct. Good job. Now that I finally remember it, let's switch to that material, which I should have named Hoodie Fuzz. And I'll do 2 renders, one with the principled hair BSDF and another with the regular hair BSDF. Let's see here. So slot 2 will be the first one. and I'll render these as quick as I can. That is more like it. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. Things I like, things I don't love. But we're definitely feeling softer, I think. Immediately that layer of fuzz makes this seem soft to the touch. But the things I don't like is that there's this kind of patchiness, right? Where we see a patch of fuzz right there, a patch here, patchiness on the back. I don't love that. And I think it has to do with reflections. So that's why I want to try the regular Hair BSDF transmission only to see if we diminish that patchiness. So we'll switch to slot 3 and render the Hair BSDF only. Let's see, let's see. Okay, so this is Hair BSDF transmission only, and this is principled Hair BSDF with reflection as well. Yeah, I think I like the transmission only. It definitely gives me a softer feel. Whenever you add the reflections, it all of a sudden feels like hair, feels like a beard or something. So I personally prefer transmission only, and I really like the way this looks. However, I think there's too many long ones compared to short ones. If we look at our reference, man, I really want to keep the render in this bottom left corner, but it keeps going to the file browser, and I don't know why. It must be something I'm doing. But let's go back to the 3D view up here. So let's take a look at the silhouette, compare it to, this is my favorite silhouette right here. Yeah, there's way fewer long fibers than short ones. So I need to take the length down, or the threshold up. I always forget when it comes to the length. Hair length point, no, that's not the right one. Length under children, 0.5. Maybe I need to go to like 0.3. Okay, well maybe that's too far actually, 0.4. Oh wait, I changed the wrong settings. 0.4 for the length, and then what about 0.05 for the threshold? Okay, so that's very few long ones. Let me adjust the length again. Okay, yeah, actually I think 0.5 maybe. To me that reads like, whoops, way fewer long ones. And then if that turns out well, we might be done. Let's go to slot 4. Okay. Yeah, that feels better in the silhouette. At least in that spot. Though I feel like I need more hairs. It just feels low. Like there's a lot of places right here where there seems to be no hair. So here's something we can do. If I know I'm going to be rendering primarily the shoulders and not below that, remember that we've got a lot of hair, the vast majority of hair growing below the spot that we're rendering. So we can add a vertex group to force all of these hairs up to the area that we are rendering. So tabbing into edit mode, let's add a vertex group. I'm going to select the bottoms of the arms. Add a new vertex group. We'll call it fuzz density. Then I'm going to start growing until I get to the level of the waist. Select an edge loop and continue adding to the selection till we get to about here. And I'll assign that weight of 0. Control I to invert and assign a weight of 1. And the way this works is it's going to take all the hairs below that and push it up into the weight of 1 area. All right, so if we go down to our vertex group controls, density, fuzz density, and basically this should like double in the amount of hairs. Just want to take a look. Whoa. It almost looks like there's more hair inside the mesh. than outside. That is kind of interesting. Definitely interesting. But let's only change one thing at a time. So we have forced more hair towards the top. And let's switch back to the image editor and switch to slot 5 and render once more. How is that looking now? Okay, we definitely seem to have more. Population has increased for sure. Man, it's still not growing in certain spots. What is that about? Overall, I think it's good, like 90% good. We have that very soft feel. It feels realistic. But there's just that other 10% that's bothering me. Let's see, the only other thing I can try that I'm aware of trying is how the hairs are emitted. Okay, so at the top of emission under source, I mean, are we seeing patches? Yeah, like right there, for some reason, nothing is growing. Just a bald spot randomly. So then I might play with the distribution. Maybe jittered is not the right choice. Let's switch to random. I do feel like it kind of improved over there. Yeah, is that all it takes? Maybe it's as simple as that. Let's give it a shot. Oh, come on. It's even worse. It's even more bare, and it looked better in the viewport. What is happening? I've already forgot what number I'm on. 6. Yeah, I don't think that really helped. I was misled. Man, I don't know. That almost feels like a bug. Because it should be completely consistent, but we clearly have patches. Wow, super weird. I love the way it looks right here. This is a home run. But everything else, I have issues with. I'm going to try one more. I want to go down to length. Maybe this is just too far of a change in the length. Like, let's go to 0.7. 0.6. Oh no, I went to 6. 0.6. Do I need to add a little bit of uniform randomness? Let's make that real small, like 0.001. What about the size? 0.5. The fact that there's a bare spot right here is driving me insane. None of my normals are flipped. That does help to kind of visualize this, doesn't it? Like you can see the hairs more easily, but there is definitely some sort of patch bug or something going on. Let me keep messing with the uniform setting, 0.002. You know, this tends to make it grow out a little bit. It's not really helping with the patchiness level. Unless I take the value down more. Oh, whoa, 0.002. Yeah, this setting is really sensitive. I don't think the uniform's helping at all. What about the random? Well, that might be what I needed. Take the size down. All right, so where were we at? We were at 1. All right, the patchiness seems a little more prevalent. And then at 0.5. Threshold's at 0, so everything should be getting this random value. I mean, the coverage looks good in the viewport. Strange that it's a little bit different in the render, but let's render one more time and send thoughts and prayers, please. Okay, this is looking promising. The bare spot is better. Is it too fuzzy though? It could be too fuzzy. Especially right here, looking like a shag carpet or something. Well, as I always do, I think for a first version, it's looking good. We can always come back and tweak this as we need. Definitely don't want it looking like a shag carpet, but the components are there. I do want to do a test from various lighting situations, which will take like 20 minutes for me, but should be instantaneous for you. All right, let's shuffle through them. Okay. Definitely things I like, but it's definitely not perfect. A little too fuzzy. I'm thinking the fibers are too long overall, and it's more evident in some renders than others. And there's also an issue of the fibers appearing kind of dark. In this one especially. We can see the underlying sweatshirt material is a little brighter, but the follicles are a darker value, and I don't like that. You know, it has the effect of like human arm hair. So I'll probably need to adjust the color. And I think those two are the only things that bother me. I think the population is good. It definitely captures a soft feel, though perhaps a little too soft. And yeah, potentially the color. I really like this render. This one's my favorite. The way the lighting just hits it. Really, really appealing. Really realistic, I think. And that's the main takeaway. Hopefully you can see that these components and how they work together is how we can achieve believable, soft fabric. And for a lot of years, this was a big mystery to me. I still see a lot of renders from people posting online that don't seem to have a grasp on it. But I really do hope some of that's been demystified for you here. So again, version 1 complete. I will almost certainly come back and edit this later. So see you in the next video.